Welcome to the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast for CHSN. With Charlie Roumeliotis, I'm Pat Boyle. We are brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. Charlie, we're going to a place, a winning streak. 3 wins in a row for the Blackhawks. We have not seen that since late February of 2023 when they won 5 straight. It's been an eventful first few months of the season, but finally they've stacked some W's together.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Major League movie where he's like, if we win today, boys, that's called a win. If we win tomorrow, that's 2 wins. If we win after that, that's called a winning streak. The Blackhawks, first time in, almost 2 years that they've won 3 games in a row. And I think we had asked Connor Bedard that, saying like, hey, haven't won more than 2 in a row. And he's like, I didn't even know that. And he was kind of like almost embarrassed by it. And not that it fell on him in any way, but just the fact that the Hawks have not been able to put together 3 wins in a row since Patrick Kane was on the roster. That 5-game winning streak that the Blackhawks had in February of 2023, that was during the stretch where the Hawks had beaten Ottawa, Toronto, and then it was Vegas, which was the last home game for Patrick Kane. Then they beat Dallas 4-3, and then it was the San Jose game, which was the 5th win in a row, and that was the game that Kane got pulled in the morning skate or whatever. It ended up flying back home to Chicago. So great to see I know we were talking about it for a while now. Every time the Hawks get a win, it's like stack that second win, then get that 3rd win in a row, and just see what it does for the overall morale of the group. And you can kind of feel it within the locker room. Like, locker room's been a little bit more livelier over the last couple games. So it was nice to see them stack that win against a winnable game in the Seattle Kraken, and them not let that get away from them.
Yeah, the vibe was good. We went to practice on Friday before they made their way to Calgary. And, the holiday Christmas music was playing in the locker room. The vibe was upbeat. The pace of practice was upbeat. And, I did catch Phil Thompson say to Connor Bedard something to the effect, it's kind of a big deal, 3-game win streak for this franchise. And Connor said it shouldn't be. And he's right. Like the fact that he didn't know they hadn't won 3 in a row, he wants far more than a 3-game win streak. And all these guys want to win more. And it was nice. I talked to Nick Foligno on Friday about, actions speak louder than words. And for the better part of 3 months, we've been talking in circles about how they got to play, aggressive and energy and, win battles and, get their confidence going and then stack wins, on and on and on. And at some point, it just becomes noise. It's nice to see that all of that talk and all the changes that have been made and everything that this team has gone through. And again, we're only 30. What game are we? 30. Going to be 34 games into the season on Saturday. It feels like it's been 70 games so far, but no, the vibe is better, and it's nice to see them get some results after playing some really good hockey. We talk about the scoring first thing. They've scored first so many times this year. It's crazy, and this win streak has produced a tandem that I don't think anybody saw coming. Teuvo and Mikheyev absolutely going off.
Foligno said after the game he nicknamed that duo Teravainen, and so that's the dynamic duo that nobody really saw coming between Teravainen and Ilya Mikheyev. And so Mikheyev now, so that was his 4th goal in the last 3 games. He had only 2 goals in the first 28 games of the season, and then we mentioned on the last podcast, Teravainen breaking out with a 3-point effort. So now it's back-to-back 3-point efforts for him. And then he followed that back-to-back 3-point effort with a multi-point game with 2 assists. He's been awesome. 8 points in his last 3 games after having 6 points in his previous 25. It's just an absurd kind of roller coaster of a streak that Teravainen has been on, with the 7 points in his first 5 games, then going 25 with only 6 points, and now 8 points in his last 3. All the guys that the Hawks had brought in, Teravainen, Bertuzzi, Mikheyev, Pat Maroon, like those guys, Pat Maroon has been pretty consistent all year, but Mikheyev, Teravainen, and Bertuzzi, they're all starting to come out a little bit more. And this is what the Hawks were hoping to see at the beginning of the season when, I know when the coaching change was made, everyone was like, oh, well, do the Hawks make this coaching change if Connor Bedard isn't struggling? And I'm thinking, they brought all these guys like Teravainen, Mikheyev, and Bertuzzi to help alleviate some of the pressure for Connor Bedard, and none of those players were producing at a high level or at a consistent level. And so to see all of them start to produce offensively for the Blackhawks and doing so on a relatively more consistent basis, you see the entire team is playing a little bit freer, and it's translating into Connor Bedard also playing a little bit freer because he doesn't feel like he has to be the guy driving the offense. And if he doesn't produce, then the Blackhawks don't win the hockey game.
Yeah, the Teuvo situation is crazy. We've talked a little bit about what he's gone through. It was a week ago after the Saturday game against the Devils that he was told he was going to be a healthy scratch Sunday at the United Center against the Islanders. Foligno gets sick, and Teuvo, they insert him into the third line winger spot that Foligno usually had. And it's been from that point to now that he's contributed to 8 of the Blackhawks' 11 goals this week. 8 of the 11. Like, that's unbelievable. And it happens sort of in a weird way. We'll get into that with Nick Foligno coming up in just a bit, but good for him to stick with it. And I guess we're hoping Phil Kurashev, with the reset that maybe he's going through right now, being a healthy scratch the last 2 games, maybe he'll have that bite and some of that hunger and win some battles while he waits to find the scoring touch. And we'll see, if the threat of going to the press box in a suit and actually having it come to fruition for Phil, if that's going to, boost his game once he returns to the lineup.
Yeah. The Hawks haven't had to tinker much with the lineup over the last few games because they've strung together these 3 wins. And this is probably the first time all season, Pat, that you look at all 4 lines and you're like, okay, all 4 lines are what you're going to get when they hit the ice. Like, the Connor Bedard with Nick Foligno and Ryan Donato, and Nazar's line with Hall and Bertuzzi, Dickinson with Teravainen and Mikheyev, who we highlighted. And then the 4th line has been fairly consistent pretty much all season long. And so if you're Anders Sorensen, you want to string together these wins. It's nice that you have all 4 lines that you can depend on right now. And so for the Blackhawks' sake, you hope that carries over moving forward, that there can be that trust factor when any line gets sent out on the ice, because I don't think there really is one line that's struggling right now. And that's the consistency the Blackhawks have been desperately searching for when it comes to all these line combinations. Do I think Teuvo Teravainen is going to be on the 3rd line the rest of the season? No, I do not. I think eventually he plays himself back into the top 6, but it's almost like you want to ride this hot streak. And then once that starts to fizzle out a little bit, then you can, promote Teravainen or maybe start riding the hot hands. And so I like that the Hawks have a good 4-line rotation right now in their lines.
How about the start we saw on Thursday night against Seattle? That first period, I have never seen this season more grade A scoring chances, 7 high danger chances in all. 2 posts were hit. You had Mikheyev with a brilliant look. The Donato Bedard right in front of the net, and Donato denied as he tried to put one home. Bertuzzi hit a post. We had the 3-on-1, and Nolan Allen He drew iron as well, ended up a little bit later on getting his first NHL goal. But that first period, it was starting to, I guess I'm a little jaded because of the way the season has gone. I was like, how can they not leave the first period with a 1-0 lead, or in this case, 3-0 lead, because they were that dominant.
Yeah, it was so crazy. We were like legit laughing about it on the broadcast after every chance. I mean, Troy Murray was busting out laughing when Nolan Allen hit the post, because it was like, geez. And then Joey Anderson followed that play up too by batting it out of midair, and it was going directly into the net. And who was it? I think it was Yanni Gourde ends up stepping
Gourde
right in front.
made the save. Yeah,
and it's just like, holy cow. And so it was weird going to the first intermission, like you saw. It was like 10 shots for Chicago, 5 for Seattle. And like, to the naked eye, if you didn't watch the game in the first period, if you're just a fan that's scrolling on their phone and you see 10-5 shots, you're like, oh, okay, this game's a little lopsided, but it's fine. But it's like, man, like 7 of those 10 shots were just high quality chances. And a couple of them were posts, and like the Joey Anderson play never gets recorded as a shot on goal because it gets blocked. So it was just a crazy first period. Almost to the point where I'm like, if you're the Blackhawks right now, are you encouraged by the way that you've played, but you don't have anything to show for it? Or are you like demoralized that nothing came away from that? And so it was nice that they didn't let that impact them psychologically. And they were able to say, okay, if we turn in another period like that, the chances are going to go for us. And fortunately they did.
Yeah. I mean, and it was a workmanlike goal that got them going. It was the forecheck midway through that second period, with Mikheyev in on the forecheck that led to the Seattle turnover. And then, Teuvo finds Mikheyev with a little shot pass right in front that goes off Mikheyev's leg and in. So, like, you kind of figured after all the unbelievable scoring chances and high danger slot shots that they had and ringing them off post, it would take a bounce off a leg. That would be the first goal of the game. I mean, that's hockey in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, fitting. And, I was thinking about too, how difficult it's been for the Blackhawks to score goals at 5-on-5 this season. And now they're on a stretch where, they score 5 against the Islanders. They scored 3 in the third period against the Capitals, one of which was a shorthanded goal, and the other ones were obviously at even strength. And then you got this goal, the Ilya Mikheyev goal, that it goes off his knee. It's like, oh, where were these bounces earlier in the season for a lot of these guys? And so, nice to see them put together, and 3 consecutive wins at home too. Like the Hawks had talked about wanting to make the United Center a place where they want to protect home ice. They want to make this a lively place again. And as far as opponents coming into the United Center, and so. Great to see them get 6 out of a possible 6 points on this 3-game homestand.
And the crowds have been great, Charlie. Like, yeah, it's been we thought that the Sunday Islander game, was that the one that you thought was the most energized that you had seen? It was an afternoon game. A lot of kids were there. It's the holidays. You've got kids home from college as well. I never know how things are going to be when you're competing with the NFL, but on that day, it was pretty electric in that building.
Yeah, the Islanders and Capitals just going back to back, like those crowds were the best, it felt like, of the season. I think of the Dallas game when they scored 6, like that was a great crowd too, just because they scored I think it was 17 seconds into the game, or like the first shift into the game. So it's like, oh wow, we're already into it. But yeah, credit to the fans for showing up and providing the energy in the building. And nice to see the Blackhawks are starting to put together a respectable home record too.
I want to throw to the Nick Foligno interview now. It just fits with the 3-game win streak, the Teuvo Mikheyev roll that they're on, and what's on the horizon with the Winter Classic. Less than 2 weeks away. The guys were working in their Winter Classic gear at practice on Friday before they left for Calgary. And so here's my conversation with Nick Foligno after the 3-game win streak and the role he played, albeit being sick, that led to Teuvo getting the shot on the third line with Mikheyev.
Teuvo and Mikheyev are on this run, but you have a little something of involvement in it. If you don't get sick on Sunday, they're not
yeah, see, I'll take all the credit.
It should, right?
That's just the way the game is. It's funny that way. I mean, and that's a credit to Teuvo for just taking hold of the opportunity, right? And that's what kind of pro he is. Obviously, he wasn't happy with where his game was, and then came in and had a chance to rectify it, and he did that, and he's done that. And we all know what he brings to this group, and we're really thankful that he's here and the way he's playing, especially. And him and Mickey's combination right now is pretty deadly.
How great is it after all the talk that you and everybody have had in this room for the last 3 months that you're finally seeing the results on the ice, and just have you seen kind of that morale lift over the last?
For sure. Just winning breeds that. It gives you confidence in what you're doing. It kind of validates a lot of what you're putting and implementing. And I think with Anders coming in, it's kind of helped us too to see how, the things he's instilled is working. And I think to a man in here, we're excited about the way we're playing, but also not, complacent in that, we've won a few games. There's still a yearning for more. There's still an understanding there's more to get to and has to get to, and we're not where we want to be by any stretch of the imagination. So it's always balancing that, but knowing that, we're feeling good about ourselves, which we should. It's what happens when you win and you play the right way to win.
You were breaking in the Winter Classic gear today a little bit. There's a tradition in recent years where you guys show up in a outfit as a team. Have you guys decided on that yet? And
we've decided, but we're not giving out any information. So
right.
No, it's part of it. It's what makes it special is you get to show your personalities in different ways, and I think people are going to like what we chose, and we're pretty proud of it, and just the message that it sends, and also just it shows a little bit of personality from our group and what we're all about here.
You guys have had a rough schedule, to say the least, but the two keys is Thanksgiving, you're able to be at your brother's house with the kids, and this weekend, right before Christmas. So Uncle Nick, Saint Nick.
Yeah.
So
got some more presents I'm sure I'll be bringing, and it's special. It's just to be able to see my nieces, and we don't get that much time, obviously, during the season, and to be with family is always so important this time of year. So it's a special and unique situation that I'll take full advantage of.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
So we covered a lot of bases there. They're keeping it under wraps, how they're going to show up to Wrigley Field on New Year's Eve. Got any ideas? What do you think? What do you think some of the options might be that they're considering? Well, they've already decided, but that they were considering.
Yeah. So I remember, was it the Boston Bruins that showed up in full Boston Red Sox, old school baseball with the Sox? And
yeah.
I thought, I was like, oh, that would be a really cool idea, but it's already been done before. So I don't think that's I had heard that's not part of the equation. So I have no idea. I did hear the way they will be getting to Wrigley Field is going to be very cool.
Okay.
And so that should be a unique kind of experience, but yeah, I'm excited. I feel like that's always part of the aura of the Winter Classic is all right, how is everyone going to show up? What are they going to be wearing? And just kind of hype up the game. So curious to see what the team decided.
Yeah. And with the playoffs being, not on the horizon for the Blackhawks this year, unless they go on some unbelievable run, this becomes their Super Bowl, their biggest game of the year. And it is the marquee regular season event for the National Hockey League. And I think of back to 2009, just how important that game was for the Blackhawks renaissance. Boy, it'd be really nice for some of the young guns of the Blackhawks to have big afternoons against St. Louis.
For sure. The outdoor games, I think, have gotten a little bit watered down to the casual fan because it's not a once a year thing where it's the Winter Classic. It's now you got Stadium Series and you have, the Canadian outdoor games where they do those things. And so I think everyone understands that, right? But the NFL or the NHL is such a gate driven league, and even just outside of Chicago and St. Louis, it might not have the same pop as it once did when the outdoor games were first being introduced. But in Chicago, if you're a Blackhawks fan, I was at the United Center yesterday and fans were rolling through the press box and and just kind of saying hi to our radio booth. And they were just like, got my Winter Classic jersey, got my tickets. I can't wait. Like the hype in Chicago is super high. And so if you're in the city of Chicago, it's an amazing experience to go to those games, and it's going to be very memorable. And so, I think that the hype in the two cities or the two markets that the game is being played at is always going to be there. And so I think that provides the unique experience that the NHL has always done.
And I think it was so smart of college hockey, namely the Big Ten and Wrigley Field, to capitalize on having this amazing venue set up for the Winter Classic, and then just a couple of days later playing all these great college games. And what a perfect time when like my daughter's is going to be home from Penn State, and Penn State is playing. When are you ever going to have the opportunity to see, Penn State if you're, play in your hometown of Chicago? So it's going to be really, really cool. So kudos to all those. And again, it's an elaborate setup. You were on the call for what you guys are going through as the rights holder with radio. There is no stone left unturned when they put this thing together. It's meticulous.
Yeah, I was amazed at how rigid, in a good way, that things are. It's like, they've been doing this for almost 20 years now, and they have it all down to a science. And so it's the way that it's how prepared they are for this is going to be it's really cool. And I'm excited too, because I was there in 2009 as a fan, and then I was there in the Stadium Series, the Soldier Field game. I think I was working for NBC. I was an intern at the time, still at NBC, and then was able to cover the Notre Dame one for NBC Sports Chicago it was the Bruins. Yeah.
Yep.
And so now I'm excited to be kind of part of the broadcast team on this. So it feels like every stage that I've experienced these outdoors have been a little bit different. And so I'm excited from a personal standpoint to be there for the game.
So I want to mention on the podcast here, if you are in the Wrigleyville area, and even if you don't have a ticket to the game, come to Bernie's at the corner of Waveland and Clark, and we're going to do a pregame show. It's almost like the pregame show. I think it's around 2:00 or so, but the Coors Light will be flowing. Kaylee Chelios, Rick Ball, myself, we're going to get Panger to come over as well, cast of thousands. So we will have a pregame show, and we're giving away tickets to the game. So you got to be there to win. So make sure you come by Bernie's on New Year's Eve early at around 1:30 or 2.
Okay, so I have a request for the fans. So we're going to be, WGN Radio, me and Kevin Powell are going to be at Murphy's Bleachers, I think from 1 to 3:30. So if you want to make a day out of it, come to Murphy's Bleachers first, stay there for an hour, and then head over to Bernie's and make a whole day out of it, and then win those free tickets, and then you can go to the Wrigley Field. So
yeah,
it'll be fun.
I mean, beverages will be flowing for everybody but those of us that are working.
What?
So that should be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to that and more on the Winter Classic coming up. We're going to see some bodies return to the lineup. You were in the Seth Jones scrum. Give us the latest on Seth Jones and when he may return to the Blackhawks lineup.
Yeah, so he practiced today on Friday for the first time since suffering that right foot injury on November 14th. And I asked him specifically, I'm like, did you know right away that it was broken or whatever? Because he ended up finishing the third. He played the entire third period. And he's like, it was one of those things that you knew something felt off. But after the game, the adrenaline had died down. You realize this is not good. And it's funny tying this into the Winter Classic. I asked, what are we, like 10, 11 days out from the Winter Classic? And I was like, at any point were you a little worried that you weren't going to maybe participate in the outdoor game? Because he had never participated in an outdoor game in his career. And he's like, when the injury happened, I didn't think anything of it. But around the 3.5 week mark into his recovery, he said he was hoping to take the next step and it wasn't getting any better. And he said he wanted to try skating at around 3.5 weeks, and he put his skate on, and he's like, I couldn't even put my skate on, and I was really frustrated. And so I think at that time, some intrusive thoughts started to creep into his head, like, will I be back before Christmas? Am I going? And so fortunately for the Blackhawks, he was back at practice on Friday. I think he's one of those guys that doesn't really need much practice time to get ramped up, just because he's so used to playing 30 minutes a night if he has to. And so we'll see if he returns against Calgary. I know Hawks are on a 3-game winning streak, so you don't want to tinker too much with it. But a guy of Seth Jones's caliber, that's a guy like when he's healthy, you find a way to get him in the lineup immediately.
And he returns to a D-core that's playing really well. I think Nolan Allen has been one of the pleasant surprises recently. Congratulations to him on his first NHL goal. Look, I don't think, he's going to be known for his offensive prowess, but he did draw iron yesterday and did pot his first. So, and the comparison that Anders Sorensen made in after the morning skate yesterday was he's got some Hjalmarsson-esque qualities about him. And that in this town, you're going to find your way into many fans' hearts if you have a career anywhere near Nick Hjalmarsson's.
I was just going to say, if Allen can just be just half of what Hjalmarsson was, I think he's going to his future in the NHL could go a long way. But you always wonder how guys that weren't drafted by this regime would play themselves into the conversation of being a longer term picture for the Blackhawks. Like, I think of guys like Lucas Reichel and Nolan Allen and Louis Crevier. I think some of those guys that weren't drafted by Kyle Davidson, that you wonder, like,
even
they're
Mrazek.
really, yeah, that's true. It's like they're really going to have to earn their way into being a long-term puzzle piece for the Blackhawks. And I don't know if anyone expected Nolan Allen to kind of make the Blackhawks out of training camp and be like a permanent NHL player this year. And so it's been nice to see the growth of him over the last couple years, and for him to get his first career NHL goal. Again, he's not going to be a guy that lights up the score sheet very much in his NHL career, but I think he's someone that knows his identity as a player, like tough to play against, big hitter. When he was in Rockford, that he would have a tendency to take himself out of the play to make a big hit in the neutral zone. And I think he's learned how to find the balance of when to make those plays. I haven't seen that as much in the NHL where you're like, oh boy, odd man rush because Allen, tried to take a big hit in the neutral zone. And so I think he's done a really good job of finding that right balance, and good to see him get rewarded on the score sheet.
I asked Sorensen, what was the message before practice today? And, he said they showed plays that led to the big goals that gave them the 3-1 victory. And one of the ones he was referring to was Korchinski picking off a pass, and then that starts the breakout for the Blackhawks. So again, it's, they're trying to take the positive steps forward. I think we've seen some of that from Kevin Korchinski in this recent call-up, don't you think?
For sure. And I thought it was noteworthy that they sent Wyatt Kaiser down to Rockford and not Korchinski when Seth Jones has been cleared to return to the lineup. And I was a little surprised to see the Kaiser assignment. Like, I don't think he's been playing poorly, but I think they wanted to make sure that he doesn't go too long without playing games. And so I think it speaks more about how well Korchinski has played during this brief little stint. And they want to say, let's give him some longer rope before they maybe inevitably do send him back down to Rockford. Or if Korchinski continues to perform the way that he has been, maybe it's a situation where you're like, all right, we weren't expecting him to be here this long, but let's ride it out as long as we can. And if he shows us that he belongs here for the rest of the season or however long that is, then that's a great sign too, because then he's exceeding expectations.
We're going to see Petr Mrazek back. It'll either be probably Saturday or Monday in Minnesota. So, we asked Anders if they had the game plan set yet. They said that they're still discussing it. You got any thought or feeling on what they might do?
I would expect Mrazek to get Saturday. It looked like he was kind of warming up in the starter's net in practice today. And so I think he'll get the Calgary game. And good to see him back in a good headspace. I know he left it was the Winnipeg game, which is almost 2 weeks ago, with that groin injury. And he said it was one of those things where he felt it early. And it was the second shot of the game against Winnipeg. And then he didn't face another shot for like 6 or 7 minutes. And so he's like, I felt something a little bit. I wanted to ride it out. And then there was a TV timeout. You saw him talking to trainers a little bit. And then it was the next shot, I think, that he was like, let me take myself out, because he said in the past he had tried to kind of power through it and it would worsen. And so he's like, I felt just a little something, and it was enough for me to say, I don't want to mess with this. And he said he actually admitted that he was ready to return a little bit sooner, but then he got the flu on Sunday. And so it knocked him out a few extra days. And then in addition to that, I know he left the team for a couple of days due to personal reasons. And I was having a good conversation with him after the morning skate the other day, and not to disclose too much, but it was a scary family situation that he was dealing with. And so fortunately, things seem to be in a much better place in that regard. And so nice to see him maybe in a little bit more of a better headspace as well, because there was a stretch there where he looked a little off. And so hopefully now that he's in a better headspace, you'll see him return to form.
And kudos to Arvid Söderblom, who filled in admirably and is finally seeing some results for the great play. Yeah, he had the hiccup on Long Island when he got pulled and Comesso came in the third period of that game. But since he's returned to the crease, he's been really, really good. And sometimes, like in the game against Seattle, not seeing a high volume of shots, but still seeing and making timely saves from some really good scoring chances.
For sure. I'm really happy for him just on a personal level, because last year was really difficult. I mean, he only had 5 wins in 32 games last year, and he already has 5 wins right now in 13 appearances, and we haven't even hit Christmas. And so that's great to see, because as a goaltender, I remember you would ask goaltenders like Corey Crawford or whatever, and you're just like, what metric do you look at? Is it save percentage? Is it goals saved above expected? I remember having like conversations with, and he's like, wins. Like we like wins, and so that when you're a goaltender, if you're stacking wins, that's where the confidence is going to come from. And so for Söderblom, he's got 3 wins in a row now in his starts. He's never done that in his NHL career. He's got 4 wins in his last 5 starts after having was 1 win in his first 8 starts of the season. So it feels like water is finding its level from some of the earlier starts that he's had in the season where he deserved wins, and now he's getting them.
And, I talked to him a little bit today. I actually got him in trouble with Troy Parchment because they had to, catch a flight to Calgary, and he was still in his Winter Classic pads. And they're like, hey, not for nothing, stop talking to him so we can, we can pack this stuff up.
I've been there.
But he credits the work with Jimmy Waite, who I don't think we give enough credit to, with all the different goalies he's worked with over the years. Look, when you make coaching changes and have different regimes and one coach stays consistent, that's because you're doing a really good job. And Jimmy Waite has done a great job with the stable of goalies he's had over the years. And this project with Arvid is really impressive, considering how hard things were last year for him, and how this year, other than that one game, I mean, he's been among the league leaders in save percentage, and he's tracking pucks better. He looks like a different goalie. So kudos to him for filling in, because, if I said to you 2 weeks ago, Mrazek's leaving, and oh, by the way, while he's out, they're going to finally win 3 straight, you probably would have said I'm a little crazy.
Yeah, and Laurent Brossoit being still has not suited up for the Blackhawks in a game this season. I mean, if things were going sideways with Arvid, and then you got the Mrazek injury and the Brossoit he hasn't played, I mean, you're deep into the well of like that territory the Hawks were in a couple years ago when it was calling up Dylan Wells and, calling up guys from the ECHL to crazy situations. And so Arvid, I don't think has gotten enough credit for how he has helped stabilize the waters, both during the Brossoit injury as he works his way back and during this recent stretch where Mrazek needed a couple weeks to recoup from the groin injury.
He's actually created quite an interesting topic that we can get into at a further date. But, when Brossoit does come back, whenever that is, it could be late February. It's going to be an interesting decision that they have to make because, as we've said before, he's no longer waiver exempt, and the way he's playing, he would not pass through waivers. So we'll get into that at a later date. One of the subplots to Thursday's game against Seattle was the return of Jeremy Roenick and honoring him for his Hall of Fame nod that he went in November. One of the best speeches you will see. If you haven't seen it, go check it out on YouTube. It covers a hockey life and then some. And as we all know, JR, he's lived a nice life. It's been a very interesting life. So check out that speech. But he had a interview with Troy Murray in the atrium before the game. He joined us on CHSN on the pregame show for like 15 minutes. And I know he stopped by WGN radio booth as well. He jumped on the broadcast for at least half a period. I think we're going to see more of JR around the United Center. And I think that's not only good for Jeremy Roenick, but it's good for the Blackhawks.
100%. And it's good to see Jeremy Roenick. I mean, that speech, like you mentioned, was such an all-timer. And I think for him to acknowledge his shortcomings and where he went wrong with the kind of the divorce of the Blackhawks back when he was a player and the role that he played, it was nice to see him kind of take ownership of where he fell short. And it's great to see because the fan base with Jeremy Roenick, like I was watching the Q&A that he did with Troy Murray from the broadcast booth, and they were airing it on the Jumbotron at the United Center. And Roenick comes out and he steps on stage and he's like, holy cow. I mean, it was packed. The atrium was loaded. It was like 2 hours before puck drop on a weeknight. And so it was awesome to see the support that JR gets. But for him to personally, it sounds like he's in a much better situation and like headspace personally. I love that both sides have kind of said, let's put the past to rest and make right on our fan base too, because this is a marriage that worked well when you were here. And it's great to see kind of everyone bury the hatchet. And there more JR. He is a character, man. Like the Hall of Fame. I know the Hall of Fame speech was great, but I think it was the day before they did a Hall of Fame. They always do like an alumni game, and there was like a video of JR holding a mic and he's like moonwalking on the ice. And I'm like, man, this guy is he knows how to work a room, how to work a crowd. And so the more JR we get in Chicago and hopefully on broadcast or wherever it's going to be down the road, I think the better for the Chicago fan base.
Yeah. So while we were on the set, we do the Aurelio sauce pass. Of course, JR is the pitch man with Joe Aurelio for Aurelio's Pizza. And on cue, we had Joe there with some Aurelio's Pizza. And we had JR call out this, it's the sauce slogan. And so if you're coming to a game, you never know. If you drop by the atrium and you check out the CHSN studios, you might get fed while you're there from one Hall of Famer, Jeremy Roenick. So anything else as we exit stage left?
Well, actually, last thing I want to say on that, so during the first TV timeout of the game on Thursday, the Blackhawks aired it was like a 2-minute tribute or whatever, thanking JR. And so then they panned to JR in his suite, and he's got family, friends, whatever. And like the refs were getting ready. I mean, it was at a point in the game where it's like the red light went off, so we're back on the air and like getting ready to drop the puck. And I think the entire fan base at the United Center got on their feet and gave JR a standing ovation. And the officials looked up to see what was going on, and it was JR, and they stepped aside and they were like, let's let this breathe a few more. And it was like another 20 to 30 seconds where players on both benches got up, started stick tapping. The players on the ice looked up at the Jumbotron. And so credit to the officials too for recognizing that moment and seeing that there was an ovation that was starting to build up and letting JR get his moment in front of the United Center crowd. That was awesome.
And kudos to Game Ops of the Blackhawks for putting on a hell of a tribute video. Yeah. Go check that out. Pearl Jam, Jeremy spoke, and it was awesome. So cool to see JR back there. We got a JR-esque victory, and hopefully we'll see more of the Hall of Famer at 1901 West Madison the rest of the season and beyond. That is going to do it for this edition of the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast. For Charlie Roumeliotis, I'm Pat Boyle. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will catch you next time. Happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas.